Green share. Hello everyone, my name is Elliot Volkman and I am the co-founder of Digital District. With me we have a very fantastic presenter who's going to actually help you manage your digital finances. So without further ado, Sam, I'll let you introduce yourself and kind of discuss quickly about what you're going to go over today.
Sure. Thank you very much. My name is Sam Boyd, and big shout out to everybody that's a part of Digital District, and specifically Alex Stevens, who brought me in here. I know her from way back at her carpenter shelter days when we used to raise money together for the homeless shelter. So thank you, Alex. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to pull up the presentation here.
Great.
All right. Okay. So the topic today is personal finance and technology. Before we get started, just to keep the regulators and the attorneys happy, this is our quick disclosure. All right. So before I get into the agenda, a quick about me. I'm a certified financial planner, and what that means is that I offer comprehensive financial planning advice and investment advisory services to individuals, families, businesses, and nonprofits. So that ranges the gamut of anything from retirement planning to education funding, for businesses setting up 401ks, buy-sell agreements, kind of the whole spectrum of financial services. In other words, if it's got a dollar sign in front of it, I probably have an opinion and a recommendation. So the agenda for today. The topic at large is how are we using technology to better plan our finances and achieve our goals, either long-term or short-term. Before we get into what's out there and what the challenges are, I want to give a quick kind of 30,000-foot view overview of what financial planning really is, because that's a somewhat nebulous term. After that, we'll go into what it really means specifically for millennials, the landscape of what's out there, what you can consider. And then I've got a couple of conversations that I use in other seminars and with clients to help frame this discussion and put some real-world, real life behind it. So, financial planning. We all travel down 3 phases of life. Okay. I don't care who you are, where you're from, how much money you have, we all travel down this path. The first part of your financial life, the first of 3 journeys, is the financial dependence stage. And this is when you're working for your dollars, right? You're accumulating resources, and typically there's a deficit between what you have and what you need. Okay? That's a mighty motivating factor to get up in the morning and get out there and do your job. But this is kind of the Wall Street world where it's all about give me your money, be more aggressive, save up until you hit this magic number, right? And that magic number represents the amount of money that you need in order to move on to the next stage, which is financial independence. You're no longer working for your money's working for you. And this is the point at which you've essentially traded in all your human capital, the ability to get up, go to work, and earn a living, for investment capital. That's also the point at which you no longer have control, right? Because your ability to change jobs, work harder, work smarter is essentially out the window, and you've transferred all that capital into investments. This magic dot that you see here, the red dot, that represents a dollar amount that's derived uniquely to every person. This represents your lifestyle, the present value of how much you need to be able to, no longer have to rely on working. Now, financial independence doesn't mean retirement. Retirement, by definition, means to take out of useful life, right? So that's pretty cold, pretty horizontal. Financial independence, on the other hand, is the point at which you're doing things because you want to do them, not because you have to. Things that are entertaining, enriching, enlightening. So it's important that we change the conversation. It's not all about retirement. For instance, myself, I'm not going to pull up to a beach and sit on a beach and do nothing once I call it quits. I'm the kind of person that's always going to be doing something. But we'll get back to that a little bit later on. So anyhow, as you march through this path, it becomes less about accumulating and more about just protecting what you have and making sure it's there for you as you move through your life. And then the third stage is financial transcendence. This is where you are using wills and trusts and insurance to ensure that all of your wishes and the way that you want to leave the world, your legacy, so to speak, that they come to fruition.
Hey, Sam.
And this is kind of, yes.
Sorry, real quick. It looks like the presentation slides, looks like visually it's stuck maybe on the first one. Can you try to pop off screen share and back in? I'm not sure if it's, oh, there it goes. That was weird. All right, cool. Yeah, we're on the right side now. Thank you.
Can you see it? It's actually got some. Can you see all three now?
So right now it's on investment fundamentals, the effect of inflation. There it goes.
Maybe I'll just do it. I'll do it without going full screen then.
Perfect. Yeah, this works right now.
Okay, great. Thanks,
yeah, sorry
Elliot.
to interrupt. You're good to go.
Okay. So this is what I was trying to show you, the three stages, right? Financial dependence, independence, and transcendence. Okay, so that's kind of the background 30,000-foot view of why do we do financial planning, right? At the end of the day, it's about defining what financial independence means to you and accumulating the assets that you need to be able to live your life that way. And then real quick, two of the fundamental pieces of investment management and financial planning that are important to know. The first is inflation, pretty straightforward. If you stick your money in the mattress, right, at a 3% rate of inflation, 20 years from now, that $200,000 in the mattress would only buy you, $108,000 of goods and services. And 40 years from now, that $200,000 would only buy you $60,000 of goods and services. So the real point of investing and the reason why it's important to use the stock market is because of inflation. The best hedge against inflation is the stock market. Another way to think of that is if you own the stock in the company that you buy toilet paper in, and toilet paper rises in price from $2 a roll to $20 a roll over 40 years. If you have an ownership stake in that company, then you're participating, right, in the growth in revenues. Okay, so we have to use the market as a general term to combat that. Okay, and then the other kind of key thing in financial planning is compounding, and this is something I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in the presentation. But compounding, the idea of investment compounding is that your money makes money on itself, right? And the analogy here, the graphic that you see is if $5,000 is invested annually at the end of each year, and it grows at 6%, right, without any fees or taxes or expenses, over the course of 30 years, that would grow to about $400,000. Okay, so two things to keep in mind. Why do we use the stock market at all? Why do we invest? It's primarily inflation and compounding, but that's a tricky little piece, the compounding piece. So I'll come back to that. Okay, so that's the overview, just to get everybody warmed up. Very exciting stuff, I know. But I want to pivot now into Millennial Challenges. So I'm 27 years old, and as a 27-year-old, I'm in the less than 1% of CFPs. There's an audible sucking sound in the industry as the average age of an advisor is over 55, and they're all retiring at the same time the boomers are. And there aren't many of us that are in the business, at that level, at the CFP level, that are young. But that gives me kind of an interesting place in life, because typically I'm dealing with a lot of older people that are transitioning into retirement, but at the same time I'm facing challenges that are unique to the people that are on this call, to millennials. So a couple of the big ones: Social Security and retirement savings. I've got a slide on this later on, but the long and short of it is, when you think about that financial independence time period of life, you've identified what your lifestyle is. Okay, You have income coming in from Social Security, and then the gap, the delta between what you have from Social Security and what you need to maintain your lifestyle, you supplement that from retirement savings. Now, Social Security is in tough shape. All right, we're going to get into that. But this is unique to us, and we're the first true generation that will not see Social Security the same way that our parents and their parents did. Another unique challenge is student loans. Average of $29,000 of loans in 2013. This is a psychological burden, but it's also a cash flow burden. The money that we use to pay our student loans has an opportunity cost, and that opportunity cost is that if it was diverted into an investment or retirement or so on and so forth, you would be able to suffice those competing financial priorities. But the case is that most people carry loans, and many people carry a high amount of loans, and that cash flow diversion makes it difficult to save for other things. The third one, especially around here, purchasing a home. What's the average price of a house in D.C.? $400,000 or $500,000, right? Payment on a $500,000 house, it's $100,000, right? So $100,000 is what you'd need to save. And if you're saving that through your paycheck, how much do you need to earn in wages? You probably need to earn $150,000, $140,000 in order to net after taxes that down payment. So, it's not just a down payment; it's how do you understand the mortgages and the financing and so on. But that's unique to us, especially with the student loan burden that we bear, many of us bear, and also underemployment and unemployment, being able to amass that amount of money. The fourth one is investor psychology and shell shock. So we kind of came of age as the market was blowing up, for lack of a better word. And there's many studies on this, and it isn't conclusive at this point. But many people believe that millennials have been, permanently scarred by, what our parents went through. Now, I'm not a 100% believer of that, but we did not, come of age and, were contributing to 401ks and things like that. During a really robust stock market period, although over the past couple of years we've had a nice comeback. Another thing is that we are skeptics at our core. Millennials are very skeptical, and that leads into a lot of different financial planning caveats. And then we're digital natives, right? We are very comfortable using technology to manage our lives in ways that our parents would never have believed years ago. And then financial literacy, something specific to us. Only 24% of millennials can answer a 4 or 5 questions correctly on a 5-question survey from FINRA, which is the financial regulatory body. And what that tells me is that we're in a situation where saving for retirement and all the other competing financial priorities are making things relatively difficult. And in conjunction with that, we have questions about Social Security and what we will be getting from it, right? So those two things combined put a great deal of onus onto us to really take the wheel and be our own steward of our finances. And we're in a situation where this is a relatively complex industry, and it's designed that way. The industry has been designed to kind of be so complex that people just throw their hands up and say, do whatever with my money. We're trying to combat that, but anyhow, financial literacy is extremely low. Just to kind of put that into perspective, millennials at 24%, Gen Xers at 38%, and Boomers at 48%, right? So we're on the low end, and a lot of this comes with time and wisdom and kind of learn as you go. But the other figure 13 to the right, that shows the disparity between millennials with over $50,000 of income and those with under $50,000 of income. And this is important because many of us are either unemployed or underemployed. And $50,000 around here in D.C. isn't a ton of money, but out there in kind of the flyover states and in different places, that's a pretty good income. So anyhow, those that are underemployed or unemployed are saving at an extremely low rate and have a far lower financial literacy rate. And just to kind of put a cap on that Social Security discussion, what do I mean by there's problems with Social Security? So there's two things that Social Security covers. One is disability income, and the other is income benefits for retirement. The disability trust fund is going to run out next year, and what that means is that it won't be depleted. People will still get their benefit. But the money that's collected through our pay stubs will go out at the end of the year every year, and there will be nothing left over. And based on payrolls, we'll only be able to support 81% of what people are currently getting. Okay. The one that's a bigger issue, especially for us, is the retirement benefit. The reserves are projected to be depleted by 2033. Okay. And at that point, again, just payroll deductions, just the money that the IRS and Social Security collect through our pay stubs, will support 77% of our promised benefit. So we're paying in $1 to get 77 cents back, and I've got a lot of thoughts on how I would fix that, but there's not a lot that we can do at this point. And you're contributing 6.2% of your income every year to that. So, you know, if you do the math on it, a typical wage earner, you know, let's say that you would get $20,000 in, you know, let's just say $25,000 in Social Security benefits. If you take out, you know, 23% of that, right, that's $5,750 a year you wouldn't get. The difference there in a present value, the amount you would need to save to make up that difference over, you know, say 30 years, you know, that's another $100,000 plus that you need to save to make up for that difference. So it's a real concern. It's a real concern. And again, the onus is on us to get it right. So enough doom and gloom, right? What do we do about it? What's next? Like I said before, we are digital natives, and that's really cool. And there is a plethora of tools out there. I'm not going to cover all of them. There's plenty of research that you can go and do and read consumer reviews. What I really want to focus on is how do you use them, and what are the fundamental variables and assumptions that underlie these programs, and how can you toggle those to make it more real world? How can you make more sense of it? And then more importantly, how do you plan if you're going it alone? So from a technology landscape standpoint, there's a lot of different types of tools, and I kind of group them into 6 groups: budgeting tools, banking tools, planning tools, investment tools, reports, and taxes. And I think we all are well aware of taxes. You got about a week from today, everybody, to get your filing in if you haven't done so already. Coincidentally, April is also Financial Literacy Month, so a lot of money things going on in April. But anyhow, what I'm going to focus on is kind of the budgeting and the planning side of things, and I'll talk a little bit about investing. But there's a ton of options out there. As far as free web-based options, my favorite, what I personally use, my go-to is Mint, mint.com. A lot of you guys have probably heard of Mint. It's super easy to use. You link your bank accounts right up to it. It tracks your spending, gives you analysis on trends, and breaks down your spending habits for you, which can be very useful. But there's a lot of other ones out there that do very similar things: Ace Money, Buddy, Cashbox, Gizio, Wasabi. So feel free to poke around and do a little bit of research out there, but the majority of these free tools, what they do is they take in the data, categorize your spending, and allow you to visualize what's going on from a day-to-day expense standpoint, which is helpful for budgeting. They do not render a lot of recommendations. Some of them fold in some recommendation components, but most of them are paid ads. Like, so if you're ever on Mint, they'll say, hey, the average person pays X amount for car insurance. Here's 10 car insurance companies that paid to be on this site that you should switch to, or here's a credit card that paid to be on this site that you should switch to, or here's an investment platform that you should use, so on and so forth. So there's some quid pro quo going on there, but at the end of the day, the recommendations are not personalized to specific goals, although they are catered to the data that they derive. That's all the free stuff. If you want to pay to play, there's a ton of cool applications out there. The one on the right here is EMoney. This is what we provide to our clients, and that's a sample client, Luke and Jen Affluent. And these are really cool. They're a lot more robust. Instead of just budgeting and aggregating your accounts, uh, these programs are sort of the meat and potatoes of what a lot of financial planners use for planning themselves. So it's cash flow assumptions, education planning. I mean, there's just a wealth of information that you can derive from these programs. But in many cases, you almost need to be a CFP to work them. So we'll get back to that and some thoughts on how to utilize both the free tools and the paid tools. And then one of my personal favorites. This is as easy as it gets. This is called MyOrangeMoney. It's made by Voya, which used to be ING. And it's super simple to use, and I think it actually does a decent job of kind of painting the retirement planning picture for folks. You plug in your income. It gives you a Social Security estimate. If you have a pension through work, which most people don't, unless you're federal government, school teacher, police officer, fireman, and some businesses. And then it'll give you essentially a recommendation on how much you need to save in order to suffice your income need at retirement. And you can kind of slide the tools back and forth, but that one's really easy. If you don't want to connect all your accounts and you really don't want to dig into it that deep, MyOrangeMoney tool is pretty cool. Pretty easy to use also. So moving on to kind of a broader sense and not just specific to the applications, and we'll open it up for questions at the end, and we can talk a little bit more about the specific tools that you can use and my thoughts on that. But security concerns, right? This is something I hear a lot about, especially with our own clients that we link up to EMoney. The risk is that if I put everything in one place, right, isn't it easier for a hacker to get in there and steal all my info? And the answer is yes, right? Anything built by man can in theory be hacked by man. But what you're linking to these accounts is already out there on the web, right? You're using usernames and passwords for your Wells Fargo and your Fidelity and your Vanguard to bring them all in. So that data is really already out there. And on top of that, the majority of these use what's called screen scraping technology, where they're not actually bringing over your personally identifiable information. They're just bringing over values that they update on rolling 8, 12, 24-hour periods. So the information's already out there, and they're not bringing in your passwords and things like that. It's just the values. But even more importantly, from a broader perspective, contemporary crime, right? Back in the day, crime was more personal, let's say. It was one guy with one gun or one knife, sticking you up and taking your wallet, right? These days, cybercrime, specifically for financial institutions, is just that. It's on an institutional level. You won't find a lot of people that are kind of one-off targeted by cyber crime. It's typically a situation like recently with TurboTax, where they go after the entire database, and there have been a lot of people who had their returns filed in their name that they didn't do, and now they're having to go through that whole process. Or Bank of America not too long ago, they're not targeting an individual, they're targeting an institution, right? So as long as you are going to use bank accounts and mortgages and file taxes and have investments, there's a degree of reliance that we have to have on these companies that they're protecting our interests. But from the perspective of aggregating your account, it's hard to imagine that somebody would specifically hack your Mint profile to see what your spending habits are. There's not a lot of value there. And then on top of that, the majority of these websites are non-transactional. So, unlike your bank account, which is sort of like a window, you can reach in, pull money out, deposit money, transfer funds around. Most of these sites are just showing data, the screen scraping technology. It's more of a mirror than a window. Okay. So with the security stuff behind us, let's talk about some of the benefits. I was doing a little bit of research on the topic over the past couple of weeks for this presentation, and I came across a quote that I couldn't find the study on, but it was from the Wall Street Journal. It said, studies show that people who get into the habit of monitoring their money wind up wealthier than those who don't. I could not corroborate this. I couldn't find the study itself, but that makes sense to me for a lot of reasons. So the obvious benefits of using technology is financial literacy. Most of these tools offer educational courses for free through them, and I encourage you to take advantage of them. But it's not just general financial literacy, it's financial literacy specific to your situation, truly understanding what it is and what it takes to support your lifestyle. So it's extremely important that you understand your situation. Pattern and habit recognition. This was a major light bulb moment for me when I first started using Mint a couple of years ago. I had no idea how much money I spent on eating out. I mean, it was atrocious. It was ridiculous. And unless you track your budget like that, you don't know. You just get used to spending it. You get into habits, and then it becomes your lifestyle. And you know, if that's your lifestyle, then you need to replace that income in retirement. That means you need to save more. Visualization, right? So providing data in an aesthetically pleasing manner in a way that is easy to digest, right? So data is great. Data that you can understand is even better, and that's what the aesthetics of most of these sites provide, as a way to kind of consume that data. And then something that's somewhat contrary and not in my best interest, but automated investment advice. We'll talk a little bit about this, but the fact of the matter is that when you're just starting out, it's important not to, you hear about people day trading and doing stuff like that all the time. It's really difficult to, beat the market, so to speak, beat the house. But if you have a, set risk profile, if you know you're aggressive or moderate or what have you, and you can essentially just, lock in an allocation, how your pie is sliced, so to speak, based on that risk tolerance, and have that rebalanced for you by taking all of the emotion out of it, chances are that your long-term returns will be better than if you're, tactically reacting to the market on a day-to-day basis. And studies have shown that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Some of the pitfalls, though, and this is really what I want to talk about, because I think the benefits are relatively straightforward. It's good to know what you're doing. But the pitfalls are really important to understand. So financial literacy was a benefit on the last one, but it's a pitfall here too. And the reason is, again, the onus of planning is truly on us in a way that it hasn't been for other generations. And if you're doing it yourself and you are, going it alone, and you don't have a great understanding of what it is you're doing, it's really easy to make mistakes. A lot of them aren't irrevocable. You can come back, and when you're young, you've got a greater ability to rebound. But in general, the low rate of financial literacy is alarming to me and somewhat scary when you think about all the people that are doing their own thing. So that's one of the issues. Flawed assumptions. This is something we're going to talk about later that's super important, and really what I want everybody to take away from this conversation. And that is that the industry has set us up to fail by the investment return assumptions that they've given us. And if you don't understand the assumptions that you're using in planning and what they're based on, it's easy to overestimate what your portfolio will do and the amount of money that you'll have and how you can spend it. So we're going to dig into that specifically here in a moment. Effective communication. So Mint.com, for instance, it communicates my budget effectively, but it doesn't communicate a recommendation typically. And if it does, like I said, it's from a company that paid to be on there. But data is great, right? Data is great to have, especially if you can kind of understand it. But even if it's communicated effectively, without knowing the full circumstances and all the caveats of personal finance and investments and taxes, just that data alone doesn't get the job done. And then data overload and inundation. This is something I see with a lot of clients when they first come in. We've got a 24-hour news cycle. You got more websites than you can visit. Everybody's got an opinion, right? Who's right? Who's wrong? How do you really take that data and make sense of it? And then tailored recommendations. That's the real issue, and that's kind of the Rubik's Cube in this industry, and something that my firm's investing heavily in. is how do you take data and turn that into a tailored recommendation specific to your profile and what's really important to you. And that's kind of been elusive, and it certainly is elusive with Mint.com and even the paid versions. And then the other one is individual investor return in psychology. So this kind of goes back to the day trader guy. If you're looking at your portfolio every day, you're more inclined to make trades based on what you read that day. And this is a good graphic that kind of represents that. The 10-year annualized returns of an average blended equity and fixed income investor, that means stocks and bonds, is about 2.6%. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons for this. It's primarily psychologically based. People have recency bias. I mean, there's so much written on this. At the end of the day, the point is that individual investors without a specific investment philosophy and something that they stick to without emotion typically get burned. So this slide, though, kind of upsets me because if you look to the far left, you see the S&P, a 7.4% annualized return. So people always say, well, why don't I just buy the S&P, right? If I can get 7.4% a year, compounded, I'll hit all my goals. And that goes back to the way that the industry communicates, and this is my major problem with the industry, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So, the average return conversation. Like I said before, if you take anything away from this conversation here, aside from the fact that there's a lot of cool tech out there, take this away, okay? Because the biggest risk of all that pitfall lists, the biggest risk out there to regular folks is using flawed assumptions, okay? So this is the average return conversation. The stock market, quote unquote, averages 10.9%. That's something that you hear all the time, and it's written frequently. So we dug into this, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average, excluding dividends, from 1900 to 2009, it averaged 7.19%. But that's a simple average. That's the sum of returns divided by the number of periods. So the illusion here is that if you invested $1,000 at 7.19 and it compounded for 110 years over that time period, you'd have nearly $1.9 million. In 1900, the Dow was at 6608, compounded at 7.19%. The Dow should be trading at 125,000 this year, or in 2009 when this was first done. That's not the case. The actuality is that the compound return of the Dow from 1900 to 2009 was 4.7%. And you may say, well, Sam, 4.7 and 7.9 or 7.19, they're not too far apart, right? And I'd say no. No, the result is that 4.7 compounded at, or 100,000 compounded at 4.7 for 110 years is 156,000. That's a difference of $1.7 million versus the first assumption at 7%. I mean, that's huge. That's missing the boat completely and missing your mark. So this is hard for people to understand, right? The difference between average and compound. And again, average, the sum of returns divided by the number of periods, versus compound, which is the way that money really works, right? And what people in the Wall Street world rely on, and financial planners like myself have to rely on, and if you do it yourself through applications, you have to rely on. So let's put this another way. I don't know, Elliot, if there's a way to poll this and we can see what people think, but I got a quick pop quiz here. So you run into Bob at a cocktail party, right? Bob brags about his $100,000 IRA, and he has an annual return over the last 2 years of 25%. You're impressed, right? But you walk away trying to calculate how much he has now. So how much is that IRA worth at the end of the second year? 156,250, 100,000, 150, or 144? All right, which one is right?
So,
do we have the capability to take a poll like that?
So we've got a bunch of people chatting on Twitter. All you have to do is select either A, B, C, D, or E and use the hashtag DDMoney. We'll give that just maybe like a minute or two and maybe give Sam a break from speaking. And then we'll take a quick look and see what we've got over there. All right, we'll give it another maybe 60 seconds, and then we'll see what comes in.
Thanks, Elliot. Hey, shout out to whoever made the Scrooge McDuck invite. I don't know who did that, but that was the coolest graphic ever for this. So thank you to that person.
That would be Carmen.
Carmen, props. Props on the Scrooge McDuck reference. Very cool. Okay. You ready, buddy?
So it looks like no one has any particular idea. We're all terrible
cool.
at money.
That's cool. No sweat, right? So let's go through these, right? Answer A. This is what Bob wants you to think. Okay, he wants you to believe it's 156, 250. This is compounding. This is 25% the first year, 25% the second year, right? 25 plus 25 divided by 2, 25% average and 25% compound, right? 156, 250. Now, B is also correct, okay? This is also a 20% average return. He just didn't make any money. He had 100% return the first year. He lost 50% the second year, so he went to 200, back to 100, but he still averaged 25%, right? Now, if you look at C, 150, this answer is also correct, right? He could have earned 50% the first year, 0 the second, 50 plus 0 divided by 2, still 25%, right? And then the last one, this is if he lost 10% the first year and he gained 60% the second year. At the end of the day, he's still averaging 25%, right? So this is nuts. This is nuts. Average returns cannot be applied to money. Average returns mean nothing. They mean nothing. The only thing that matters in money is compound returns, and that's what's important to understand. So the answer is all the above. Another way to look at this is done by J.P. Morgan, a fellow by the name of Robert Shiller. Bob Shiller is one of the smartest guys in the business, and he is a renowned economist. And he prints this graphic every year or at 4 times a year in the J.P. Morgan Guide to the Markets, which is a great publication. And what he does is he looks at rolling averages for stocks, bonds, and a 50-50 portfolio, and this one was from 1950 to 2011. And what he does is he uses a 20-year rolling average from day by day by day. So that's 365 to the 20th power or whatever. So that's a ton of data, essentially, right? So in the first one, you see this is a 1-year rolling average. On the far right, you see the 20-year rolling average. And what Bob Shiller's saying here is that over these long periods of time, a stock portfolio, at best, would have gotten you an 18% annual return. At worst, you would have got a 6% annual return, right? And the average would have been 10.8, okay? For just bonds, you would at worst case, you would have had a 1% return. At best case, you would have had a 12% return. Average is 6.3. In a 50-50 split between stocks and bonds, right, you would have done at best 14%, at worst 5%, for an average of 8.9. So far, Bob's right. Bob has got it. He gets it, okay? But then if you look here, as soon as you apply this to money, he's wrong. He's 100% wrong. And my CEO, who thought this piece up, he was at a conference with Bob Shiller, and he, I think he was speaking after him, and he said to Bob, you know, you're wrong about that second assumption. And Bob Shiller goes, why? And he goes, can you show me any 20-year period of time where the market earns you 10.8%, 6.3 or 8.9 every single year for 20 years? And Bob goes, no, of course not. That's never happened. And essentially, you know, invalidated the whole argument, right? So the point that I'm trying to make here is that everything you see in your 401k, they're all average returns. Everything you see out there, for the most part, on the web, on Yahoo Finance, they're all average returns. They're a sum of returns divided by a number of periods. And you need to know that that doesn't mean anything to you. That means nothing to your money. It's all about compound returns. And when you look at compounded returns, we begin to temper our expectations. And just generally, I'm a pretty conservative guy because I'm in the business of having to give you your money back with interest. But anyhow, the point is that if you're going to be planning and if you're going to be using software on your own and they ask you to stick in an interest assumption, a rate of return assumption, don't use what you saw for the 10-year return on the 401k prospectus. Use something more conservative, 3, 4, 5, at most 6%. Okay. So pivoting away from the average return conversation, from a true financial planning perspective, all this stuff means nothing without goal setting. At the end of the day, financial planning is all about goals. And here at Capital Asset Management Group, we have what we call the goals driver conversation. And it's all about figuring out what money was like growing up, what keeps you up at night, what are you opportunistic about, what do you want to accomplish over the next 3 years. Personal finance is just that. It's personal. It's not about the amount of money, it's about the purpose of money in your life, right? So regardless of what tool you want to use, money needs a motive, okay? And that could be anything. That could be, your family, health, community, charity, travel, tangible assets, professional assets. It's extremely important that you align your financial plan with specific goals. It's goals-based planning. For the 80-year-old client who beat the market last year, hooray! That's great, right? But did you take on too much risk to do that? What was the purpose of it, right? So aligning your financial plan, your investment decisions, and everything else around that with specific identified goals is extremely important. That's the first place to start, even prior to picking an online tool. And then here at Capital Asset Management Group, you may see in the title here, we're the home of the Institute for Financial Independence. We have a proprietary financial planning process that is built to take the complexity out of planning your money. The whole idea of it is to boil it down into short, unique conversations, little vignettes, some independent, some that flow back together, to take all the noise out of it and help people plan effectively. First one is the cash flow conversation. I'll go through these quickly. The whole idea behind the cash flow conversation is forget Mint, right? Forget your budget sheet. Show me your pay stub. We're going to use a really simple assumption. What came in either was saved, right? It went to support an asset, like a mortgage, or you consumed it. I don't care how you consumed it, right? But what comes in is either saved or it goes out, period. We don't really need to parse it. From a budgeting perspective, it's good to know what you're spending on and have trends and understand your habits. But from a planning perspective, that's all noise, right? To identify your lifestyle, it's much simpler and much more effective to just use a very simple assumption like the cash flow conversation. Second is the blueprint. This is a visual representation of your assets. In each one of these boxes within the blueprint, it's kind of like a cabinet drawer. You open it up and there's 10,000 products that you could purchase, right? And this industry is all about getting you to buy products. Blow that stuff out. It's the product itself is far less important than the type of money that you have, and I'd be happy to elaborate on that for anyone that has questions. And then the third one, really simply, your life is boiled down into 2 or 3 pots of money. Everybody's is. What is your lifestyle need the day that you want to become financially independent? What's the gap between your lifestyle, the amount of money you need to support, and your retirement income? If there's a gap, right, how do you fill it? You fill it with your retirement assets. And this conversation tells us, assuming really simple math, right, 3% compound return, how much money do you need in a present value to be able to support your lifestyle? In other words, if you were a researcher at a college and you wanted to study, I don't know, panda bears for 10 years and you needed $10,000 a year to do it, in present day dollars, right, how much would you need to fundraise in order to support that expense? So that's what we're doing. We're boiling it down, we're making it simple, and we've invested heavily into development. We've got a business-to-business application that we licensed other advisors, and we're working on a B2C app straight for consumers to help people. So So anyhow, let me wrap this up so we have some time for questions if anyone has them. What are the conclusions? The very first thing is to start with why, right? What's the purpose of money in my life? How do I define financial independence? Do I want to go, sit on an island and drink pina coladas? Am I the kind of person that's always going to work, right? What are your short-term goals? What are your midterm goals? Is it, purchasing a home? Are you trying to, fund education for a child? All of those goals are going to lead to different recommendations. The blanket recommendation of, put every dollar you can in your 401k, that makes no sense for somebody that's trying to buy a house, right? That makes no sense for somebody that's, getting ready to send their kid to private school or something like that. It's important to start with why, okay? And get literate, right? Got to get literate. There are so many courses out there and tools out there to educate folks. It's alarming how illiterate we are as a country, especially as a generation. But you need to know, the onus is on you now. It's on you to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. The third is to know your lifestyle. Everything is derived from your lifestyle. If you can do this a lot of ways. The way I do it, through the cash flow conversation, very simple. What comes in goes out. Or you can use applications like Mint, whatever. But know that you need to know your lifestyle, because you need to be saving for the gap. That's the whole point of retirement saving. Know the lifestyle, know the gap. Tracking your budget, aggregating accounts, and obtaining data is super easy. There's no reason not to do it in my mind, especially in light of how I look at security. But distilling a recommendation from the data is not necessarily as easy. So the market for these types of tools is working on that, and so are we. But data alone is not the only factor. Then the next one, you're not Warren Buffett. I hate to break it to you. Your brother-in-law that's a day trader. More power to him. That's a hard way to live. That's a live by the sword, die by the sword, way to earn a living. But studies have shown that individual investors do not keep up with a more disciplined investment approach. Okay. The next one is really important also. Wealth is created by the personal and professional decisions that you make, not by financial markets, right? So when you get a mortgage, you are committing to writing 360 checks over 30 years to build that equity. That's how wealth is built. When you sign up for your 401k, you are committing to writing 26 or 24 or 12 checks a year, every year, to yourself, right? The market's going to help us beat inflation, right? The market's going to kind of do what it does without oversimplifying it. But at the end of the day, you create wealth, not the financial markets. And then fundamentally, what comes in goes out. At the end of the month, I don't care who you are, what comes in goes out. There's usually not a lot left over. This is basic human psychology. We spend what we have. So the best way to get around that is automatic deductions, like the mortgage payment, like the 401k, setting up external bank accounts, using taxable brokerage accounts, life insurance, cash value. I mean, there's a ton of ways to do it. But if you don't set it up and make it easy on yourself, you probably won't do it. And then the last one is leverage technology, but understand the assumptions. Okay, the technology is great, but if you don't know the assumptions that are behind it, you can be setting yourself up for failure. So anyhow, that's all I got for you today. Here's my shameless plug at the end. If anybody wants to reach out to me, please do. I got the email down there at the bottom. And again, thank you, Digital District, for the opportunity. This was a lot of fun, so I hope I get to do it again.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. So we actually had one question for you. There might be maybe another that trickles in. Just a reminder for anyone, if you do have questions, we could probably fit like another one or so. It just depends on Sam. Feel free to just use the hashtag DDMoney. So the first question real quick comes from Alexis. She wanted to know where I can set up a 401k independent on my company that offers benefits.
Okay, so the question is, I'm not sure if the question is if she is the company owner. or if she works for the company, right? So if she's the company owner, it's really easy to set up a 401k, but that may not be the right thing to do. Depends on your cash flow. There's a lot of ERISA rules with 401ks. You have these means testing requirements. If you have employees and you want to contribute to yourself a matching contribution, you have to contribute to them too. There can be a lot of onus, and there's a lot of regulatory filings. Typically for entrepreneurs and small business owners, we keep it simple with what's called a SEP IRA. SEPs are nice because there's not a ton of requirements and extra work that you have to do. But based on your situation, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to walk you through that. The one thing to note though is if you have a 401k through your company, and if the question is, I have a 401k through my company, I want to set something up outside of that, be careful. You can only have 401ks are only offered through employers. What you could do is you could set up either a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, right? Outside of that, at a brokerage account, and that could be anywhere. That could be Scottrade. That could be, you name it. It's really easy to do. Just go online and you can figure it out. Or if you want to reach out to me, I can help you. But the issue you have to keep in mind is that if you participate in a 401k and you are contributing to that 401k, you're what's called an active participant. And an active participant is your ability to contribute to IRAs and Roths is capped based on your income. So if you make too much money, the IRS won't let you do both, right? If you make under a certain amount, you can do both a Roth and a 401k, or a 401k and an IRA, but it all depends on your modified adjusted gross income. So that's kind of a mouthful. I'd be happy to give you more detail if you wanted to, though. But thank you for the question.
Excellent. So I think that's it for questions right now. But again, feel free to use contact information that Sam has listed here if you're interested. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you about your financial status and helping you plan for the future. But Sam, again, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you joining us. This has been a great presentation. Of course, for those of you who attended, we will be sending out a recording. Sam, we will, of course, send it out to you as well. And we will have this up as a recap on our site. It's today. It's Wednesday, so maybe Friday, maybe next Monday. We'll see.
Thanks so much, Elliot.
Awesome. All right. See you at our next event, folks.